Candle, Feather, Wooden Spoon is a collection of short stories, and it's divided into 3 parts. The first part, Candle, Stories that Shine New Light on Tradition, explores Jewish texts and teachings from different vantage points. For example, Empathy, A Whale's Tale looks at the Jonah story, but from the perspective of the whale. The Flying Insect Cafe explores the effect of when Moses stands from Sinai and proclaims that all flying insects are now unkosher, the effects that this has on a family whose entire livelihood is a kiosk that sells flying insect cuisine. There's the story of Yofiel, who it's about the archangels, and they come together and they're trying to give each of the angels their assignments, and they have a little trouble with this one peculiar angel, Yofiel. There's the story Time Palace, which takes Abraham Joshua Heschel's idea of Shabbos being a palace in time and imagines a legion of angels, the Cassiolites, who live on the cloud strata of our atmosphere and collect all of the wasted minutes, days, years of our lives. There are many stories that come from questions, as many stories do. For example, Fairy Footprints comes from the question, why does matzah have holes? And Shades and the Rock on the Grave comes from the question, why do we lay rocks on graves when we visit the graves of our loved ones? There are also stories like Shmui and the Shabbat Encounter, which pays homage to the great stories that come out of Helm, the stories about Helm, and there's also many others. The second part, Feather, Modern Stories That Take Flight, explores identity and relationship through a modern Jewish lens. The characters in these stories might remind you of people you know or of yourself. There's the story in Shalom Bayit of a marriage chuppah on the top of a mountain that expands to become a symbolic sketch of a home for one loving couple to the symbol of a national protest movement. There's the story Jew, which is a fantasy adventure seeking to restore the word Jew to its full enchantment and beauty. That story begins with a girl in middle school. Her name is Mirav, and there's a boy, Broderick, who spray paints the word Jew on Mirav's family business. And the word appears to Mirav as very frightening. The J looks like a dangerous hook. The E looks like claw marks. The W looks like jaws. And throughout the story, we see that word being redeemed in a really surprising and interesting way. There are stories like The Most Important Person in the World and Allison Searches for Her Hebrew Name, stories of self-realization. Candle, Feather, Wooden Spoon, the title story, is a quest to find magical fruit while outrunning the plague of darkness, and also a quest to find understanding between a grandfather and grandson. The Magic Word is another quest story in which the main character seeks to discover the most powerful magical words. A Pock-Faced Beauty explores identity and wisdom shared between generations and the true meaning of beauty. Catching the Wind, a Tully origin story, celebrates the bonds of friendship and the knots of the Talit. Why do they have knots? What is the origin of that? The final part, Wooden Spoon, Stories That Stir Food for Thought, mixes story with philosophy in an attempt to taste the transcendent. Lace Theory proposes a unique framework for how we're all interconnected. Radiant Window, a Zoharic journey, is a search for one's true calling and employs a lot of verses from the Zohar, the foundational work of Jewish mysticism. The Goat Keeper imagines a lost tribe who broke off from the Israelites after witnessing the revelation from Mount Sinai. So they saw God at Sinai, but then they ran away out of fear and created their own tribe. And so what is their purpose? How do they fit into our story? Two Rocks, a very long legendary love story, despite its title, is actually one of the shortest stories in the collection, and it explores love in geological time. Abraham's Return is a true story from my family. And finally, God Chooses a Genre is about imagining God as the author of all life, choosing what genre to write the world in. Is the world a horror story? Is it a love story? Is it fantasy? Is it nonfiction? And explores or maybe it's even choose your own adventure. So I invite you into the pages of Candle, Feather, Wood, and Spoon. At the end of every story, there are questions to generate rich discussions, and through these stories, may you find many morsels and treasures.